Melissa's getting us our soup bowls. I mean, but the borscht is a little slow to cook. Why are we having borscht today? What was
Russia hacked our soup.
Oh, it was. It's Putin that's the aficionado of borscht, and so we decided that if Trump loves him, and besides, I've got Stephen King on the phone from Maine, and he's telling me about how in Maine the voters passed ranked choice voting. We used to call it instant runoff voting, but it's ranked choice voting now, where if you can choose the candidate that you really believe in, vote for them. The borscht is hot. You can vote for the candidate you prefer, and if your candidate doesn't get a majority, you go to your backup vote, which could be your second choice. In my case, for Connecticut, if Connecticut had that in the presidential election, my first choice was and would still be Jill Stein for president. If we had instant runoff voting or ranked choice voting, when Stein didn't win, my vote would have gone to Gary Johnson. Jill Stein, Gary Johnson didn't win, then my backup to the backup would have been possibly Hillary Clinton. And of course, my fourth choice would have been no choice. So there you go.
I'm kind of okay with Russia taking over the U.S. if we get borscht all the time. I'm good.
You like borscht?
I do.
I hate beets.
Beets. Ugh, they make you red inside. Socialism.
Oh, okay. So, go ahead, Mark. You can introduce everybody.
Okay, returning to the show. Last time we saw our dear friends was prior to the election, so we'll talk with them about their campaigns and about all the larger things. Cora Santaguida, who ran for the 27th in Stamford, Darien. Rolf Maurer, who ran for the Registrar of Voters, and we have things to talk about his campaign and also things we've learned about being a Registrar of Voters overall, where it's not democratic, or it is Democrat-ish, but we'll get there. Anyhow, hi. Where to start? Votes, recounts, counts, all sorts of things. Tell us about your campaigns. Just give us a summary of how it went.
Well, I ran for Registrar of Voters in Stamford, and before that I ran for Board of Education the year before. And I think we were discussing before how it seems to be very much a sort of vital position in town, and I really got a sense about that. It's not really that visible a position, but I realize how important it is. So in Stamford, collecting signatures for Jill Stein, I found out that when we were handing them in, we were assigned the task of giving it to the Republican, not the Democrat, because I don't know why. For some reason, it was their task to deal with us, because I guess they thought there might have been some bias of the Democrat Registrar of Voters is dealing with it. I don't know why. There's this assumption that the two are connected. Oh, sure. But in my experience, it was kind of curious, because when I was handing out flyers on election day at one of the polling sites, repeatedly people came out and they were checking to making sure I was standing in the right location. First, a police officer came by, then he left, and then a poll worker came by, and she actually was counting with her feet how many feet I was standing from a sign.
You have to be 75 feet from the door of the polling place.
Yeah, well, she was stating that I had to be 75 feet from the sign. I was like, no, because then I'd be around the corner.
But then she decided with your feet. I mean, that's insulting.
Yeah. But I was 20 feet from the sign, so that was okay. I said, okay. But she didn't even understand why she was being sent out, and the police officer didn't understand why he was being sent out. But he told me that they wanted me to stand on the other side of the parking lot. Well, the other side of the parking lot doesn't have a sidewalk, so I have to file a complaint about that. And there was another issue, but that wasn't specifically related to my office, where a flyer was being distributed, a postcard was being distributed in the mail that was conflating Jill Stein's campaign with a local Republican that's closely aligned with the Tea Party.
So in other words, what you saw locally is kind of summing up what we're seeing at large, where there's just, no one knows how the voting system works. Mm-hmm. The rules are kind of haphazardly enforced, if they're enforced at all, mm-hmm. and sometimes they try to enforce things that just don't exist.
Purview, right? Yeah.
Okay. Now, go ahead and talk about your campaign a little bit. Talk about You've talked about how on election day you had issues. Talk about the issue you had where the local mainstream media ignored your existence or made you into somebody else.
Well,
It's all in the vowel.
yeah, I have to say,
The Stamford Advocate had a vowel movement. It was not good.
it's weird.
I've
I
been
was
wanting to use that line for months. Oh my gosh. Go ahead.
I was somewhat surprised because anything I had done for Jill's campaign, the Stamford Advocate was very nice to me, and put my name, spelled it correctly, and they didn't do me wrong, but with my election, first they didn't mention me at all, and the headline is Bettino challenges Leone, right? And then the second time, not only was the language putting me in as an afterthought, they spelled my name wrong, conveniently putting an E at the end instead of A.
The mention of Cora in the Stamford Advocate, the only mention you find with her name spelled wrong is when the Stamford Advocate curiously endorsed Bettino, the Republican. The 27th Senate District race to represent Stamford and Darien pits a political rookie against a respected General Assembly veteran, an underdog against a majority party favorite. Carl Leone served the district well as state representative for 4 terms since taking the seat in 2011. His fellow Stamford resident, Gino Bettino, is an oncologist who admits, "I am not a politician." Green Party candidate Cora Santaguida is also on the ballot.
Yeah, I was an afterthought.
Like, hi, we have to put her in somewhere, so here's a sentence.
Anytime I was mentioned, even in stuff with Darien and post-election, it was kind of like, oh yeah, and Cora. It's like,
Like they put your last name in it at least. They didn't say like they do for Clinton. They just called her Hillary,
right?
Which I think is kind of disrespectful to women in general.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think Hillary is kind of like a household name at this point, like Cher, Madonna.
They didn't talk about Donald. It was Trump. Trump versus Clinton, not Donald versus Hillary, not Trump versus Clinton. There was no equivalence there,
right.
Which I think is kind of a disrespect toward women in general.
That's interesting.
Continue.
So the language in the Stamford Advocate about a lot of things, they think they're cute, but they're really not, and they think people aren't picking up on things. Recently, they covered an article about SantaCon. And was it sponsored by DSSD or was it another group?
I don't know if it was just done. I'm sure the idea came from DSSD because it involved a lot of the bars on Bedford Street.
So basically,
DSSD?
Downtown Special Services District.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, anyway, SantaCon, they people dress up as Santa Claus, and different pubs, bars, restaurants, they'll offer deals, right, on their alcohol. Anyway, the way they covered the article, some of the bad things that happened, people getting sick or destroying things or whatever, then they're like, there was just one arrest. Just one, just the way that they worded it. Even though, all these things were awful, there was only one arrest. And then, if you think about, if you cover another topic, they'll make sure that they'll say there was an arrest. So there's a big difference.
We'll talk about what happened like a few weeks before with the park.
The article?
Yeah, that's an interesting comparison.
Well,
the arrangement of characters in the park as they described it.
Right. So yes, I had complained about, how, I'm not the only one, talked about how, the restaurants on Bedford Street, most people in Stamford can't afford to frequent at least regularly. And, servers who work there, or bartenders or busboys or whomever, a lot of them work, serve your food, and then, go home to the shelter. That is reality. And then, these amazing businesses and restaurants, and then less than half a block away, there are people, sleeping in the park.
All in the shadow of another Trump Tower of Babel.
Right around the corner.
Yeah, and I've talked about all of the different things in Stamford. How there's the Trump Tower, and I think they're building a carousel in Mill River Park. Is it a ice skating? I don't know. It's something.
It's in this wedge-shaped building. Yeah.
Right, but yet right up the hill, The new Covenant Center serves at least 100 meals twice a day to the homeless and very low-income people. So Stamford is a very, very interesting place. But in regards to the Advocate, a few days after I made the statement on my state Senate page, my personal Facebook page, comment thread, that was the biggest thing, the comment thread on the article. An article comes out about the cast of characters in that park and how they're putting up these amazing lawn chairs, for people to lounge in, and we're all one big happy family, pretty much.
So local color is it's a selling point when they want it to be a selling point. It's poverty when they want to clear a park out.
Yeah.
I mean, Mill River Park has always been quite the hot spot in Stamford for be it crime or be it trying to, I mean, it's almost like you talk about the metaphoric other side of the tracks. In some way, Mill River Park in Stamford is sort of the dividing line. Mm-hmm. You can almost say that that's where the changeover happens. And of course, Bedford Street and the downtown area trying to revitalize all those buildings that were empty for years and years, right, wants to push that farther and farther up the hill.
There is the West Side is getting some attention, getting noticed. Recently, there was a grant, specifically for the West Side because it's the poorest community in Stamford, and it's going to focus on health and wellness. Of course, what the grant is for, it's really just the first stages of identifying issues. So.
Yet, as you say, and this is one of the great ironies of the elections and gerrymandering and all of the many issues we're talking about with voting is you're sitting here talking about places needing grants. We're talking about poverty in a part of Stamford, and you're running for the 27th, which is partially Stamford and Darien.
Right.
And it makes no sense.
Oh, it was a lot of fun when you were comparing test scores. When we talked last time, I'm absolutely against Common Core. You get Darien's test scores, you get Stamford.
I mean, how are you in some way you wonder how any major party candidate, given what platforms are, can offer up that they represent that entire district.
Well, there are low-income people in Darien. You just don't hear a lot about them. Stamford, it's kind of convenient for them to shine a light and be like, look who's inconveniencing us.
There's probably some fairly well-to-do sections of Stamford that are in your district too.
Part of Chapin, I think.
Sure,
some wealthy people there.
Where our governor lives.
Where he lived, right? Yeah.
Right.
Stamford's kind of, we're Fairfield County. We're one of the richest counties in the nation. Greenwich, you have Greenwich right next door. Ed Heflin, who ran in the 36th, his district covered part of Greenwich, part of Stamford, and a little bit of New Canaan.
Yeah,
Is that true?
So, yeah.
Right. So him was like,
It's very much a way to that we see right here how you marginalize certain aspects of society, because you can't represent across like that. It makes no sense why you would try to. I mean, they can justify it, but when you know the money is talking and lower income communities are trying to compete with a rep who's part of North Stamford or Chapin or Greenwich or New Canaan or Darien, we know how it turns out. Mm-hmm. Now, speaking of elections and back to that, you got more votes in your district than the last couple of Green Party candidates in yours. I don't have any comparison for you in terms of, but I know the number of votes you got. You both, I'm assuming, I'm correct, qualify for next election cycle to not have to get signatures, so that's a good thing.
All of our 26 candidates in Connecticut held their ballot lines.
And I believe you said Connecticut had more Green Party candidates running than any other state, is that correct?
In the New England region.
In the New England
we had
region.
the most local candidates, yes.
Very cool.
26 altogether, 26 candidates?
26 this year, yep.
Okay, that's clearly on the upswing in terms of numbers of candidates. about how far do we have to go as a Green Party to have a candidate running for everything? Is that a reasonable question?
Well, as a state, since our founding convention in '97, we hold over 20 ballot lines.
Okay.
So, so yes, we are getting people, to run for those. Also, the Green Party of Connecticut Secretary David Bedell this year was. He was encouraging people to register as write-ins in districts where we did not have a ballot line. So he himself, he registered as a write-in where he lives. And also we had someone, Martha Kelly, who registered as a write-in as well. And I think there may have been a couple of others. So we're really trying to spread the word, to get people involved.
Excellent. Shout out to David Bedell.
Yes, hello.
From the Progressive Soup crowd. Continue.
So Connecticut was really in a good spot this election. In New England, at least. As far as participation, we were leading by example. There are other states who don't have established Green parties yet. Most of in the region, pretty much everybody is in the works or does have a party, and we have people that are involved in several national committees. Mike DeRosa, of course, co-chair. He is the ballot access go-to.
Yeah,
if you have a question about ballot access, it's him.
Mike's been here on Progressive Soup, I don't know, 6 or 7 times. So he and Richard Duffy, who I understand is not as actively involved as he used to be, but Mike's a great go-to guy.
Sure, he knows a lot about a lot of things, and but ballot access, people immediately think of him. And Ed Heflin, who I mentioned before, who ran to the 36th. If you have questions about public banking, a lot of candidates put it in their platform, but personally, he's the first person I would think of.
He's a go-to
to
guy.
go to.
Okay.
And as far as our candidates, IRV, ranked choice voting, that we were talking about a little bit before, definitely Rolf. So, we're in a good spot.
That's something that we know nationally that a lot more people would vote for a third-party candidate, whether it be the Green Party, Jill Stein, or the Libertarian Party, Gary Johnson, or one of the other, Rocky De La Fuente, or one of the other candidates that were on a lot of ballots. And Jill Stein was on 47, I believe, ballots. 47 in the District of Columbia.
Voters were able to safely vote for her in 48 states.
48. Okay.
3 of those were write-ins, though.
Okay. I know some of the states required it to be a write-in just by their statute.
And after the election, Jill managed to hold on to 12 states who do not have to petition in 2020.
Excellent. That's a good step in the door for next time around.
So talking about ballot access, let's go back to your campaign with Registrar voters. Now for me, because I'm absurd, I picture somebody walking in the door to the Registrar voters and the Republican and the Democrat having to thumb wrestle or something as they try to convince the person, you should register Republican, you should register Democrat. But of course, the idea of that becomes what happens when someone walks in and wants to register third party, so be it Green or be it something else. And so you were talking about how Green registrations went to the Republicans, but there's a Republican and there's a Democrat. Why isn't there also a Green Party registrar, a Libertarian registrar, a Socialist registrar, a Vermin Supreme registrar, whatever it may be? I'm reaching now. But
That's a reach.
And you know that the reason I'm bringing this up is because of what happened in New Canaan, where there now is a Green Party registrar, and they're all up in arms because they now have to pay a third salary, even though only 2 candidates won. Can you talk about that? Because it's fascinatingly undemocratic.
Yeah. Well, I think the idea is to just reinforce the assumption that there are only two realistic options. And David Bedell has repeatedly contacted the advocate when, for instance, there are people running for Board of Education, and there is an allotment to allow other people besides Democrats and Republicans. But they always say the Democrats and Republicans that are running for the office as if there are no other options. So it's sort of like a battle between the underlying rules that only allow for those two and a public perception that reinforces that, even though it is supposed to encompass more than two. So what's happening in New Canaan is, I love it. It's delicious. It puts them in a really real bind, and it demonstrates the inflexibility of the system, and it goes to the issue about IRV, and also revisiting the whole issue of how areas are districted. Hand in glove with IRV is to help facilitate it, instead of having this issue about every time an area is a town is redistricted, then it favors one candidate. He's looking for his voters. He picks his voters against the other person, and they change it. It either goes one way or the other, but the best solution is to reduce the number of districts, because that way you can have more people running for office, representing different points of view. And again, it encourages more people to vote. The current system as we have it, they say that they want people to register to vote, but they do so many things to discourage it, or they're not active enough. And like what we saw in UConn, when they had that, we spoke at UConn, we were invited to speak at UConn of our candidacy, because they were having, a professor was having a rally in October to encourage students to register to vote. However, we were told that first we'd have 5 minutes to speak, then it's 2 minutes to speak, and then we found out that we couldn't even speak about our platform. We were only supposed to encourage people to register to vote, but what's the point of registering to vote if you don't know what your candidates that you're supposed to be choosing from are standing for? So that's what this is about, to make things more substantial and inclusive.
Who told you this?
It was a political science professor at UConn and Stanford. And she hopes to do this again next year. She wants to make it an ongoing thing, which is great, but it has to be better.
They thought we should have been grateful because on the wall in the back of the Student Center, there were the 4 candidates posted with bios of each person. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like, well, we put up a Jill Stein poster. Be happy with your 2 minutes.
So just to jump back about the Registrar of Voters, to give the context of it, is that in New Canaan, the Republicans forgot to register their Registrar of Voters candidate. Now, for each Registrar of Voters candidate election, 2 people win. Generally, it's your Republican and your Democrat. Well, since the Republicans didn't register someone, all the Green Party candidate had to do was get 1 vote, and the top 2 would win. So in a democratic society, the Democrat and the Green Party candidate would be the 2 registrars of voters. But unfortunately, in Connecticut, there's a law that says every town has to have a Republican and a Democrat registrar of voters. They don't even need to run. They just get them. They get to appoint them. So now you've got the Democrat and the Green, John, give me his last name because I'm going to totally mess it up.
Amarillos.
John Amarillos. Mm-hmm. So the Democrat and John Amarillos, the Green Party candidate, are the 2 registrars, but the Republicans, come January, get to appoint one. So there's 3. So New Canaan's all up in arms because they have to find another $20,000 to pay the salary of a 3rd registrar of voters. As you said, it's delicious. That's just the greatest way to put it. Why is there a law that only the Republicans and Democrats have to have registrars of voters? As you said, it's to make it seem like there's only 2 choices.
Now, Connecticut's been around before, let's say 1856, I think, when the Republican Party was actually founded, when there was no Republican Party. We had Whigs and Tories and this and that and the other. We'll go back, Connecticut, America's had a know-nothing party, which is, I guess, evolved into the Donald Trump wing of the Republican Party. But what did Connecticut do back then? I mean, when there was no Republican Party, when there maybe was a Democratic/Republican Party, but no Republican Party, where was the statute then that said there had to be 2 parties represented in each town? That's for the audience to look up. That's something for the audience to check into and get back to us and figure out. Because I don't know the answer to that question.
Yeah, when was the first registrar of voters? Like, at what juncture did you not just walk into town hall and say, I'm registering to vote?
Yeah.
Does it go back to primaries? Does it go back? I truly have no idea.
Well, certainly probably before women were allowed to vote. And it's probably before blacks were allowed to vote. And it may go back as far as when only people that owned land were allowed to vote in elections. So at what point do all these things line up on the timeline is what we're putting in the audience's lap. It's for you to find out and let us know.
Okay, so sum up quickly. We're going to come back. We're going to do another show tomorrow. But take a minute, talk about what it is that you you learned most of all about this election cycle and what you would do differently next time?
Well, I learned a lot. But I think that, people need to remember what irked them this year. They really do. And to move forward from there, to be like, okay, you know what, I'm not under pressure with the mainstream media, like, oh, I better go for Hillary, oh, I better do this, oh, I better do that. We're not going to have downtime because we're a year-round operation, but voters are going to have some downtime. And I really think they should pay attention to other things that are going on. North Dakota, and other issues where they'll be like, oh, okay, yeah, I should check out the Green Party or a third party.
With me, what I learned is how hostile the system is to public participation, and how petty it can get. And what I would like to do the next round is to document more directly, personally, what's happening to me and other candidates. So, for instance, that example that I gave at the polling site in Springdale, I wish I had some kind of a cell phone or a tablet or something when I spoke to the police officer or this volunteer. Because what I really wanted to do at that juncture is, like, I realized, holy cow, I'm being harassed. I should have asked, could you please bring the poll person director out here to have him or her come to me and explain what exactly I'm doing wrong.
Capture that on film.
Yeah.
We're going to come back. We're going to do a second show. We're going to talk about what Ohio in 2004 and Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan in 2016, where the connection is between that and how the Green Party on a national level fits into that. You might be surprised. This has been Progressive Soup. I'm David Stevenson, and we're going to continue the conversation as we fade out. Continue.
Okay.
I'm just going to drink borscht.
I think that when we met with Paul from Pennsylvania, Paul Rossi,
Paul Rossi, yeah.
he talked about
Good
how
night,
he couldn't
America,
understand how
wherever you are.
There were the split in the Registrar of Voters office. He's like, how does that even work? He's like, when you go and turn in all your ballot, your petition pages.
Good night. See you tomorrow.